Hello and welcome to the Trusted Advisor Show. This is Rob Jacoman and I am your host, and I'm joined here by my co-host, Ryan Staten, who is with Staten Walsh. And anyway, we have another hot topic. Today, we're actually going to talk about the business owner's guide to building powerful relationships, but specifically, how do you know how your particular trusted advisor is measuring up from a financial standpoint? Are they making a significant financial impact and performing with your bottom line? Coming up right now. Welcome back. And again, another hot topic today. We're talking about, and we really want to dive deep into, we've talked so much about how important it is to have a trusted advisor relationship. But more specifically, I want to dive deeper into financial impact and how you measure financial impact that your trusted advisor, because if you think about it, so you're looking at all the relationships that you have, from your CPA to your insurance person to your financial advisor to all, your attorney, et cetera, et cetera. When you look at all these relationships, how do you truly measure or come up with a measurement for what kind of impact, financial impact that they are making on your company's bottom line performance?
Sure. So, I mean, it's a great question. It's a complicated question too.
Yeah. I don't think anyone's asking it.
Yeah. No one really asked that question too. I think it's just hard to quantify in some businesses. In my business, in the financial planning world, sometimes things get quantified in terms of rate of return. Mm-hmm. You can look at cost, fees, things like that. That's how people quantify performance or value in the relationships they have. In your business, they may look at things like premiums and how much am I paying for the insurances that I have for the business.
But do you think is that a measure of performance in and of itself? Because I'm looking at it could be a double-edged sword.
Sure.
You're right. It is complicated because you're looking at what is the difference between something that you're paying that you're valuing versus is my trusted advisor performing according to my expectations and my standard? Because we talked about in one of the other episodes, we shared our recommendations or metrics that we use for assessing the relationship in our performance from an expectation standpoint, having a plan. Is that one of the tools that you could use to measure that performance and also maybe create a financial aspect to it?
Yeah, I think absolutely. You can assign some sort of metric to those things. I think those are important things that anyone should be doing regardless. I think it does take some time and some effort and a little bit of coordination to also figure out what the actual financial impact of each decision that you make is. Again, going back to our business, usually it's a percentage rate of return type of conversation when we're talking about the investment world. Mm-hmm. When we're assigning performance metrics to other professionals, it can be a difficult thing for a CPA. It may be tacking or adding together what kind of tax savings they're generating for you. That's performance in their world. And you're paying for them to get that value in return. And I think other industries can be a little ambiguous. It's kind of what you assign to it and figuring out how much effort you're putting into that. I think the biggest and most valuable asset to most business owners is their time.
Yeah.
So I think quantifying and valuing what your time is worth and figuring out how those professionals value your time and how they maximize the amount of time they give back to you.
That is absolutely okay. This is a great segue.
Sure.
Because let's talk about this. You have a busy CFO. Mm-hmm. Okay. Because this is all happens to us all the time because we're dealing with decision makers. So you might have a busy CFO who's wearing 10 different hats. They're really good at the financial stuff, but let's say, for example, but they also have to dip into insurance and risk management and safety. And it's like, that's really not their area of expertise. Sure. And if you quantify the amount of time, let's say the average CFO makes, I don't know, let's say it's $200 an hour or $300 an hour or $400 an hour. Yeah. I don't know, whatever that number is. And you have them focusing on those things where they're not making you money and their efforts are tied up in going deep into those things that they don't have the expertise in.
Sure.
Which, number one, right from the out of the gate, they're going to be more inefficient than somebody who's actually specialized and has licenses in these different areas and expertise. What do you say to that CFO or that business owner who has a really hard time giving up control, where you're trying to quantify for them, you're trying to tell them, listen, you shouldn't be doing all this stuff.
Yeah.
You know, you're doing $200 an hour work that should be done by somebody else who's an expert, so that you can bring in more revenue for your company and your business, because that's what you do best.
Yeah. I think the conversation is it's a difficult one to have, right?
Yeah.
You know, you're dealing with personalities in the business world and C-suite specifically. And, you know, we all have a go-getter mentality, and we want to go out there and maximize value and create a great business story. Having a conversation with them like that can be challenging. I think the biggest thing is offering collaboration, offering value in other places other than just pricing.
Yes.
And saying, look, let's get you in a place where we can collaborate together and actually assign financial value to each of your daily activities. And that gets more into the business consulting role,
Yes.
which I think a lot of us find ourselves putting that hat on when we're working with clients. And ultimately, our goal is the same as theirs. We want to maximize the value of their business, help continue to bring value to them over the long term, and then figure out what their end game is in terms of increasing that value of the business, potentially selling it one day, transitioning to someone else.
Whatever the goal, their goals are, because that's
Correct.
that's a critical piece of all this is how do you help them advance and achieve their goals?
Sure.
But at the same time, there's a way to measure value.
Always.
In there's intangible ways, there's tangible ways. Because even in our world, when we talk about cost, you look at indirect cost and, you know, hard or soft cost, whatever industry you're in, you're going to have your own lingo. However, you know, I know for a fact, and this is what makes us different. And again, this is not a sales pitch for us. I'm just I'm sharing some experience that we've had and been successful with, which maybe is going to help someone else. One of the things that we've done is we've actually sat down and got really granular with a business owner and said, listen, from a risk management standpoint, we put together a spreadsheet, and we actually started to go through their business in all these different areas. Let's quantify how much is it costing you to train your key employees and do OSHA training? How much time and energy are you investing in your safety program? How much time and energy are you spending reviewing your policies and doing risk management stuff? And really start to quantify those different areas. We've actually created a metrics to be able to understand what is your total cost of risk. That's a whole, and we can have a whole nother show on analyzing and assessing total cost of risk, because that's a really big deal. Not enough companies are really focused on that area, and they should be. They should. It's as important. I would argue is as important as you're looking at your P&L statement. Is what is your total cost of risk, because it all kind of ties in with each other.
Yeah, it's kind of that thing that's not listed on a traditional financial statement that they're seeing on an annual basis. They're meeting with their CPA and they're going over some of the things that you talked about. So when we're working with a business owner, we're trying to go outside the box, the non-traditional approach of what we got to find value that it's buried deep in a lot of numbers and metrics, and bringing that to the surface is sometimes it's a long, it can be a strenuous process, but you know, that's kind of why having those professionals around you that have an understanding of how your world works, number one, but number two, understanding how they can collaborate and work with other people in your network to bring that to the forefront of the conversation, as opposed to saying, look, that's not showing up on your financial statement, so we're not going to have a discussion about that.
Yeah, just because it doesn't show up there doesn't mean it doesn't exist. And that's the whole thing. And here's the other thing that we're very passionate about. And again, I want to drive home with our fans, viewers, whatever whoever's out there who we can add some value to their lives in some way. One of the takeaways is we always want someone to walk away with some value from something that we're creating for them. So, as we're building and creating and continuing to add on to our trusted advisor network, because that's the other part of this, and what we're so passionate about is building our network, and then being able to offer that value to other business owners, entrepreneurs, and C-suite individuals, if there's a good fit, if they see there's a good fit with our model, we're going to be able to offer some of these resources.
Sure.
Right? So there's some tools. Do you have any tools that you use to analyze, kind of objectively, but at the same time, you had mentioned just because it doesn't show up in your balance sheet doesn't mean it doesn't exist.
Sure.
But like there's hidden costs in there that maybe they're not considering.
There's hidden costs, there's hidden value. So one of the things, just to pivot off of that, but one of the things that we do in our business is we work closely with other trusted advisors with our business owner clients to understand what the value of their business is from a business valuation perspective.
Yep.
Really where that becomes important is on the back end when they want to eventually sell and realize, some of the fruits of their labor.
Yep.
There's a value assigned to that. And it's a dollar amount that can be taken from financial statements. There's a lot of numbers and metrics that go into it, but there's also a lot of things to understand that give a deeper meaning and deeper value to that number at the end of the road. Things like, who are your people? Who are your key people? Yep. How important are they? How much time and money do you spend on certain areas of your business that—
'Cause people are an asset.
Correct. And that may add value or devalue the price of your business at the
Yep.
end of the road. So those are all things that we have in the conversation surrounding sale and potential transition of a business. But those are also conversations that we can be having today. And it directly relates back to some of the work that people like us are doing for our clients. If we have a good a model for retention, for example, of our employees, and our average employee retention is decades long, that assigns value to our business. Now that could be directly related to things like you're talking about, safety training, having good insurance policies in place, providing excellent benefits,
Productivity, having higher producing employees who are more efficient at their job,
Exactly.
who are well trained, who have the resources, companies that's providing resources, and culture.
Correct.
Safety culture, just the whole culture of an organization. You can tell very quickly when you walk into a client's office what kind of culture they have there. And again, that's also something that drives me is having the ability to have a perspective on so many different types of businesses also gives you a frame of reference when you're sitting there talking with a CFO and you're trying to explain this concept. And by the way, that's the other thing. That's one of the things that reminds me of what I wanted to say earlier was the level of attention that we have in this regard and getting to this level. I'm wondering if a lot of viewers who are and listeners have even heard of total cost of risk or whoever even got to this level of detail with their clients. If you've never done that process before, trust me, it is definitely worth the time to invest in going through that process, because guess what? You never realize how much you're spending in certain areas or where there's financial leakage.
Sure.
That's a big thing too, is financial leakage. You often talk about how, I saved this person so much and I did this, but you know what? Have you ever taken the time to look at these other areas?
Sure.
That maybe others aren't?
Yeah. I think that you have to look at things from a 10,000 foot view whenever you're assigning value to things, because cost savings in one arena may be costing the business more money somewhere else.
Yep.
So a great example of that in our world is when we're talking about providing employee benefits, for example, or things that the average corporation is providing to an individual in terms of whether it's health insurance, 401k, other voluntary benefits that people can opt into.
Yep.
One of the things you can do is you can trim a lot of that, and you can offer a bare bones product or service to a business, but you also run the risk of those employees leaving to go find another business that is
sacrificing quality.
Correct. So a cost savings now costs you in turnover. I think we looked up a statistic recently on employee turnover costs a business roughly 15% of a first year salary.
Yeah. Oh, by the way, we're going to do a whole show on that topic.
Employee retention.
That is a really big deal.
It's huge for businesses, and it's huge. I mean, we're in a tight labor market, and the way the world is trending today, it's hard to find good people.
Yeah.
So people, time, they're all things that are not necessarily traditionally don't have financial value assigned to them, but are things that we have to take into consideration when we're doing our planning and we're doing our due diligence with the business to say, look, if your other advisors aren't talking to you about this kind of stuff, you need to start asking these questions because, again, creating that board of directors, it's what the large Fortune 500 companies do because they're beholden to shareholders and profitability, and everything is scrutinized. And
even small businesses can do the same thing.
And they can
doesn't matter what size you are.
They could probably do it cheaper too.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the other thing is you're already paying these professionals. They have people like you and I that are in their circle. It's not hard, and it probably would save you a little bit of time too. I mean, instead of having an hour meeting with all 6, 7, 8 professionals that you're working with, why not have a 2-hour board meeting and knock out all the things? Okay, let's talk about the state of the business today.
Yep.
And now let's talk about where we're adding value or where we're trimming value. You also have people in the room that can call each other on things. And as long as you can develop,
hold somebody accountable.
Yeah. I mean, hold
right?
people accountable, and then also just have a collaborative environment. I mean, that's something that
is huge.
It's huge. And I'm a millennial. Our generation is big on that. We we all need a big hug, and everyone needs to feel like they're a part of the gang. And
that's all right.
But it is what it is. The point is the world is changing, and the way that we do business has to change with it.
Yep.
And I think that if business owners are trying to keep up with the trend in terms of technology, in terms of cost cutting and everything, the Apples, the Amazons of the world, those large corporations out there are driving everything into rock bottom. It's happening in our business with, the Fidelities and TD Ameritrade and Schwab's of the world. It's prices dropping as low as possible. It's going to a floor of zero.
Yeah.
And so there's really nowhere to go after that. So you can either, as a business, make a change and adapt to the environment you're in, or you can just go status quo and you'll either succumb to the business cycle or you won't. And so I think that assigning value is something, financial value, to things that are seemingly not numbers based is extremely important. And there's an art to it. And I think that's why you have to surround yourself with the right people to help bring that to light.
It's a great point. And so I also have some advice for business owners out there. If obviously if you're interested in hearing from our perspective, what we see and hear is don't treat your trusted advisors as a commodity.
Sure.
Because here's the thing. If you don't have the right advisors in the right position and there's a good fit, then get rid of them.
Sure.
Because they're actually more of a detriment to your business than a benefit. A significant financial advantage or a strategic advantage for your business. So where you're getting a competitive advantage because of the quality of your trusted advisors that you have on your team. The other thing I talk about is commoditization. I am on a personal mission, and I don't know about you guys. I think you're in the same boat. I'm on a mission to really decommoditize our industry because it's so hard to differentiate yourself. And again, I know exactly who I'm speaking to because I know there's going to be some colleagues of mine who are watching this and saying, man, you know what? He's onto something, because you devalue yourself as a trusted advisor when you're viewed as a commodity.
Sure.
So to me, that's a negative thing. There's always going to be areas, and we have to constantly challenge ourselves to find areas of value where we can create value for a client. Otherwise, we're going to get fired.
Yeah, I think that's,
and we should be fired.
Yeah, and that's something that we have those tough conversations with clients. I tell them, look, if I'm not doing my job, hold me accountable.
Yep.
Because no one else is telling them that, and I'm telling, and the reason I say that is because this relationship, regardless of how profitable it is, just like in a business, when you have employee turnover, client turnover is just as expensive to us.
Oh, absolutely.
As employee turnover is to them. So we want to have good relationships with people, and we want to have something that's, a mile deep and an inch wide, and as opposed to the, vice versa. And so I think that the commodity, the industry, and both of our industries, I think have done a good job marketing. And bigger companies have created that narrative, and it presents a challenge for people in our position, because we have to flip that narrative and say, look, we get it. Price is important, but there are also some other things. There's a great article actually that I read in Entrepreneur Magazine because though I am a millennial and I adopt technology, I'm also very traditional in some senses. I still read magazines.
Love it. I still have a journal that I write in.
Yeah. So yeah, there was a great article in there about manufacturing companies being successful in 2020 and choosing their vendors and suppliers. And it talked about some particular points to focus on. And obviously price was a big one, but they also talked about more so than price, you probably want to focus on some of the non-monetary related things like reliability.
The intangibles.
How reliable is that vendor going to be to you? And then also if you try to drive the price down and you start commoditizing that relationship with them, that's when you lose that relationship. It's often we hear in our world that, especially in construction, for example, where they're trying to get suppliers, for example, that have good pricing. And they're saying, well, you know, I had a great relationship with this person and it kind of fell off and now it's affecting the profitability of my business because I had to go to this other person. And the reality was that they picked away, they kind of chipped away at that piece of the relationship so heavily that the supplier said, this isn't a profitable relationship for anymore. They're commoditizing what we're doing for them. And I think we're just going to move on. It's more,
they don't value that relationship. And that's where you're bringing up a topic for a whole nother show, which we can talk about because it's going to be, you know, when you talk about taking advantages, there's a difference between making decisions on price versus value. Sure. We could do a whole show just on price and value, which we're going to do. Yeah. But you walk a fine line sometimes as a business owner, especially in the construction world. These guys are notorious for thinking that way. So a lot of times it's incumbent upon us to help educate them on why maybe that's not the right decision. Of course, price is always going to be a driving factor. Sure. I get it. But you also have to look at all the other areas that affect your business by making that decision. Hey, I'm going to beat the heck out of this guy on his price. I'm going to get him down so low. Well, guess what? Now you're creating some sour grapes with your partnerships, with your relationships with them, because they're like, you know what? I feel like you're taking advantage of me, and I know that there's a lot of choices out there in the marketplace, but we do all this for you. You know, there's so much more value above and beyond just the bottom line that you're looking for. And you know, this has happened to me. It's probably happened to you. Sure. They end up making the decision based on price.
Mm-hmm. Sure. Yeah.
They become very unhappy with their decision and they end up calling you back and saying, we missed the service that you provided because now we recognize the grass wasn't greener on the other side.
Sure.
And I find that I welcome it all the time because you never want to burn bridges. You know, if somebody makes a decision, you say to them, you know what, you're making the best decision with the information you have that you feel is right for your business.
Certainly.
I may not agree with it, but eventually I do know that if you are a world-class service and provide that white glove service that you guys always talk about, your clients are going to come back. And where they're going to stay with you for a long time, regardless of how much it's going to cost them or their investment in you is.
Yeah. So that gets back to our original point of this whole conversation is financial impact. I think financial impact is beyond price. It's greater than that. How do we quantify that is the challenge. I think that it's a challenge that every business faces, and turning a blind eye to it and just focusing on that price it's an easy out for most people. The foundation of this group and kind of what we're doing and putting this content out there, I think, is just to bring to light some of the things that business owners either don't feel they have the time to think about or don't want to exert the effort to do so. So you have two choices. You can either spend the time, which is going to inevitably cost you money because time is money in the business world, or you can outsource that effort and find someone to give you back that time, and ultimately valuing and putting a value on that time. If you can do that, I think it'll be really easy to evaluate the financial impact that all of those professionals in your network, what value they bring to the table. And so once you take that step, Once you get over that hump, then I think you're in a good spot to say, okay, now that I know what my time is worth, how much value can I assign to each one of these individuals? And then you can get into the other metrics as a secondary thing. If they're not bringing you any time back to the table for you and they're actually costing you time, that's a good enough reason in and of itself. But then you can also go back as a secondary metric to say, look, what's the pricing? So I'm getting no value on the front end.
Yep.
And also it's not saving me any money in terms of cost. So I think those are the two big issues that I would touch on if I was meeting with someone in that situation and they were trying to vet those numbers. I would spend a lot of time on that. And I feel like in our business, and it sounds like you guys do a really good job of bringing those things to light and understanding where the value comes in and what the financial impact of that is. And as long as we know our businesses well enough to be able to pare that down and do that, I think that we'll be successful in that conversation. But, and
don't get me wrong. We're not just talking about financial. It just so happens today's topic was financial impact, which I think is a critical topic because what we want to really impart on as we're bringing everything full circle, what we really want to impart on business owners, and even other folks in our industry, in our world, is when you're assessing those relationships, there is a financial component that's not necessarily just based on price or just based on premium or just based on your service fee, whatever that service fee is. You really need to look at all the intangibles and the tangibles. So the financial picture is just one piece of that relationship. That are they bringing value to this relationship from a financial bottom line standpoint? And there's ways to measure that. And we want to provide some tools and some resources to all of you that, can help you in that mission. And you're right. It's not an easy thing, but guess what? It is worth the time investment because here's how I look at it. If you can show ways to make a financial impact on a company, on one of your clients' business, imagine what they can do with that investment. Yeah. They can reinvest in a piece of equipment to actually make them even more money. They can invest in some more employees that can also make them more money. And they can really invest in their business. And to me, there's no greater value than that, than be able to show you, hey, listen, with the things that we're able to do for you, you're now able to invest in these other areas that maybe you couldn't have invested in before, and now you can.
Absolutely. Hit the nail on the head. I think it is something that, again, it's more of an art than a science, I think, in our businesses. And it's something that it should be at the forefront of conversations. It's not always that way. And I think that's an approach that's going to serve a lot of people well moving forward, not just from our perspective, but from the business owner's perspective, is understanding that, the world is changing and pricing can be commoditized and industries can be commoditized. And you have to move on from that and really evaluate what the value is to your business. And how are you going to be more productive, more efficient, and more profitable? The only way to do that in most businesses is to increase the amount of time or output that you can create from the machine that you've built. And so there's a lot of different ways to skin that cat. And, we talked a lot about the financial aspect of it, but even learning how to assign value to that is probably the first and most important step of that process.
And I think just the awareness and having the conversation with your key partners.
Yeah.
And if you need some guidance and direction, we're going to be able to provide you with some links in the description below to some other resources. You're going to be able to sign up on our websites and various other ways where you can join our email list. And we're happy to keep putting out awesome content and great content. Ryan, what is one takeaway from today? If you had any advice to impart on anyone today, what would that one thing be?
Yeah, again, I think just sticking with the general theme of some of the things that we've talked about today and also in previous episodes is making sure that we're spending the time to go through the exercise on the front end of really auditing your business, auditing your relationships, and figuring out if you're in a point in your business that you feel like you're in a lull, or that you could be growing faster, or you see competitors are outpacing you, maybe that it's time to sit down and meet with your team as a team, say, look, this is the state of our business, and creating that board of directors for your business. We've done it for our practice.
Yep.
And I think that it's been extremely helpful. So I always like to speak from experience. I don't ask people to do things that I haven't done before, or at least
Right.
tried.
That's right.
So, creating that board of directors and having that approach where we're looking at financial value and also other intangibles in the business, and how can we enhance that so that you can keep moving the needle forward to ultimately achieving the success that you want for this year and through the business cycle and through your long-term business plan. So
yeah. And I know you guys are the real deal. You practice what you preach, and that's a critical piece to know that the partners that you have in your business are advising and doing the same things. I even talk about that sometimes. Is I'm not going to recommend something that I wouldn't, if I was in your shoes and I was in your business. I'll often use this. If I was in your shoes, this is the way this is the direction I would go. And that to me is that when you have that trusted relationship and that advisory role, I think clients really respond to that, and they respond very well.
Yeah.
So, well, we want to thank everybody for joining us today. We're super excited about, all the other things that we have coming in 2020 and beyond. And we're just going to keep putting out great content. And we're open to some feedback. So we want to hear from you. We want to hear from you the areas where you'd like to hear us talk about, maybe bring on some new guests onto the show. And really this show's about you and what value we can create for you. So we're going to also share some links to your website, our website, obviously. If you want some more information on how that you can get this kind of thing set up, feel free to give us a call and just reach out and just at least have a conversation about it.
Sure.
It never hurts. Even if you want to know, hey, what's my next step? We're happy to give you some guidance and direction, and look forward to the next, look forward to the next episode, because we have some really exciting stuff coming up and some exciting topics to share with you guys. So thanks again.
Awesome.
I appreciate
Thanks,
it.
Rob.
Thanks. All right, everybody. Thank you.